Good evening. It's 5:33 on Thursday, November 12th, 2015. It is the monthly meeting of the Urbana Human Relations Commission. Could we please have a roll call?
Francis Rigberg Baker,
Here.
Kevin Bowersox Johnson,
Here.
Daniel Larson,
Here.
Janice Mitchell, Lisa Mosley,
Here.
Peter Resnick, and Aisha Lam Sobe.
Thank you. Looking over the agenda, are there any additions, edits, or corrections that need to be made? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
I second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Likewise, looking over the minutes from our October meeting, are there any additions, edits, corrections that need to be made? If not, is there a motion for approval?
I
have a little addition.
Please.
The only,
Whoops. I just wanted to make sure that something didn't get lost here. In discussion of the housing rights poster, I would just like to add to that yes, we discussed improvements in the wording to make it more effective. We also discussed distribution methods for it, and most importantly, that the ordinance enforcement committee was given the responsibility for implementing these changes.
Great.
That's it.
Is there anything else, or if not, is there a motion for approval with that addition?
I'll motion to approve with the addition.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Moving on, public participation. Seeing none, hearing none, we can jump forward. We have no old business, so let's jump to new business and our committee reports. This is a sort of a new endeavor we launched last month with the guidance of Alex, which we thank him for, and Tony for organizing. Should we go in order? Would the Community Relations Committee have anything to report? Or Alex, do you have something to say to get us started?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that after our last meeting, it was recommended that we conduct a brief little survey in terms of ideas from the entire board for each of the committees. And I used the Survey Monkey, and all of you should have received a link. I'm bringing it to your attention just in case it got caught in spam filters. Those kinds of services sometimes do. We have received 4 responses already, and so I'm waiting on the other couple of responses. I sent out a reminder probably like 3 or 4 days ago, and as soon as those come in, then I'll send out the report by email to all of you so that you have those. I have noticed, though, that the Community Relations Committee has already met, I believe, and has some documents. So,
Awesome. So would you like to get us
The
started?
most important thing. I'll tell them the most important thing.
Yes.
We have a motto.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is?
Can't we all just get along?
That's a good one.
Actually, we did have kind of a question, and that is interpreting community relations. We want to be sure we have the right idea, because it can mean different things. Sometimes it means the relation of like our commission to our community that we serve. So it's kind of a, that definition. And then the other is the relations among people in the community and facilitating constructive solutions when there's tension and so forth. And we kind of thought that that latter was more the idea, but we wanted to make sure we weren't going off in the wrong direction here. Maybe it involves both. That's okay too. Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of how I envisioned it. And I also envisioned it that it would be of the 4 committees, it would be one that could really triage or look at issues that were presenting themselves in the community and do some work with the issue and then refer it to whatever committee is appropriate, or maybe even another commission or board entirely, such as the CPRB or the task force. So I did see it as almost a first responder frontline sort of committee that would be able to handle the complexity of assessing. And I think that both of you on that committee are uniquely gifted in that area. So that I was thinking about that as well.
Great. Well, since I kind of missed the rolling out of this last month, Fran and I met and we talked about 3 different areas, and I don't think the other commissioners were sent the email, just so we didn't violate the
Open Meetings Act.
Open Meetings Act. Thanks. So at first, we just kind of looked at being a liaison to different, possibly to the Urbana Police Department or the Review Board. I know that we do have members that may also be linked to that, especially if there's the Criminal Justice Committee. You know, talking with the Champaign Human Relations Committee at times and maybe linking with them and looking into some of the same joint issues we may share. We talked about the school district as well, just wanting to get the information out to kids and be a liaison to be able to share different things we may be doing as well, and possibly even local businesses. We also looked at just looking into some research trends and looking at some different resources like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Teaching Tolerance that may be going on, and highlighting some of those from time to time just to share that with the community, because I know they're all watching and want this information. Sorry, I'm being a little silly there, but also just social justice practices. I know that, you know, I work for Champaign School District and they have a social justice committee. I'm wondering where our school district might be at with that. So we're just kind of casting our net wide and then looking at maybe possibly training opportunities for us. So I wrote commissioners and also community training if there is an issue that we decide we need to pursue. So that's kind of how we got started.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think my suggestions, Fran, your initial comment probably were directed at both, sort of, both notion of strengthening our commission's connection to community or communities, but then also what you said, kind of more specifically.
They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because if we have a better presence, then that serves all those
Yeah.
purposes, yeah.
Great. Alex?
This is wonderful, and some of the things actually that, so going to the Champaign Human Relations Committee, one of the things that I've been doing is developing a strong relationship with the Human Relations Officer at Champaign, Mr. Lionel Legrone. And over in Champaign, they call it the Community Relations Office. And he and I have developed a very strong relationship. We have traveled together to our statewide HRO's meeting. We're in the process of working with the Illinois Department of Human Rights to plan whether we're going to do an educational conference this year or not, or hold it over to the following year. And in one of our previous meetings, we discussed the opportunity of holding a joint meeting between the Champaign Commission and the Urbana Commission. And he said he would go back and discuss it with the powers that be there. And the answer is yes, that they would like to do that at some point. We'd have to think through what would be the topics and what kind of presenters we would do. And so the fact that this is on your agenda, I'm very excited to work with you to see what that would look like. The getting a relationship cultivated with the school district is essential. I'm very excited about that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that I recently completed the 40-hour training for mediation training with Joy George. Remember, she came to present
Yeah.
for the mediation center. And the reason I went to that is that mediation is an extraordinary service in conflict resolution that I think our community could benefit from as we get into complex issues. And I wanted to see what was the training, what was the depth of it, what does the center do, and it's doing a lot of good things. And one of the things I was looking also to see down the road, how many of us might be able to participate in that kind of training so that we could assist with mediation service, should that ever be needed among different groups in the community. And of course, when she was here, she did speak to us about helping mediate. They can mediate neighbor disputes. They can help mediate disputes in schools. And so one of the things I want to work with you is specifically in the area of schools is how we might be able to bring that about, introducing that service and educating a little bit that it is one of the many ways that we can resolve conflict and acknowledge conflict in our communities. So I'm really excited to work with you on that as well.
Can I get a little picky and ask a question? I love the idea of the training, just because I've been through so much of it myself. But the idea of us going more forward into actually implementing that training, to me, almost seems like a conflict of interest if, by any chance, those mediations would ever come to this commission. So therefore, I just, responding to what I heard, and that raised a few red flags for me in regards to, we'd have to be very clear as to what the boundaries are for that, and just be very careful going down that road, because if there's ever a conflict that could end up back at this commission, and we have had our hands in it prior to, I would assume that would constitute a conflict of interest.
Right. Maybe part of, it kind of relates to the work of the Criminal Justice Committee in the sense of alternatives to incarceration and that
Right.
kind of thing, that if we can more refer people to that kind of thing.
Yes.
And also, it's a good thing for all of us to know. Maybe
Right.
that could relate to the training.
Yeah.
I love 40-hour training.
Yeah.
Anyway.
40-hour training is really good. And so is the
Yeah.
40-hour training through RACES, the Rape Advocacy
Oh, I know, I've done that.
Counseling and
Yeah.
Education Services
Mhm.
program,
Yeah,
which is
it's wonderful.
one of the programs I want to make sure gets in front of
Right.
us soon.
It's also their training is it's broad. It's very social justice-y. It talks about the level playing field and all kinds of things, and dealing with helping people that you may not be comfortable with, and all those things are brought up in that training.
Yeah,
It's really
I've used that
great.
training in every position I've ever held. So,
Good for
Certainly
you.
being able to refer people to resources or
Right.
letting
Exactly,
them know that,
yeah.
Yeah.
and having gone through some of it, it's certainly helpful, and, yeah.
yeah. I think one of the things that have made the organization I've worked with and started in locally more successful is just building these relationships. I spent 4.5 years going through RACES training, going to speak at different organizations, SAS, and then letting them in turn train us about what they do. And it also it builds trust, because if somebody comes to me and says they are having issues with finances, I can give them a very specific name of somebody I've worked with that, that's like not only an organization but a name. Like, you can go see this person, you can trust this person, because in the LGBT community, trust is the biggest issue. They don't always go to RACES first if sexual assault was a same-sex assault situation. So for me to be able to say, I can guarantee you that I've worked with them, they've worked with me, it really does help. So I think it's really important to build but to take that further and get involved is the only thing that was raising the red flag for me in regards to anything that might come back. And in all transparency, I'm also working, based on my starting of the UP Center, with the city of Urbana right now, with specific to all the way with our superintendent of schools, who is amazing, specific to gender-neutral issues in the schools. So, yeah, I can connect you all with anyone that needs to be connected with if needed.
Awesome.
In regards to where to start there, but in all transparency, that was something that was through a different thing, but it also directly relates to my work here as well.
I think it's great because it's such mutual benefit to all these organizations because they need to hire profiles as well, especially races is.
Yeah.
I have a question for
Problem,
their
yeah.
committee. So do you have any plans for any kind of proactive, like approaching different communities to sort of bring the work of the Urbana Human Relations Commission to the fore as a resource or something that a lot of people don't know exists? Is that anything you've thought of? Or, I mean, not that you have to do it, that
But
you
how?
have some
Yeah.
ideas about that, you know?
Well, Aisha, I'm glad you mentioned that because after listening, Kevin, to your comment too about bringing races here, is that something that falls more to the training committee or would that be something that also could be a community relations? Because I do think sometimes, and we do have UPTV to share the wealth with, you know, it just kind of came to me too, when I think of training, it could be training for the community via, you know, having guest speakers come in. I'm not clear on who's on what committee yet and what all because there's going to be overlap, and I
Right.
think,
There's
like
always-
you were sharing resources, I think that we may, decide to go about this in a practical way. And
I mean, like, do you see your committee maybe, like I said, it doesn't have to be just you two, but
no.
Maybe approaching different community groups and
Well,
like giving a talk and saying,
we hadn't gotten that far yet, but we
I'm just,
can.
it's just an
Baby
idea
steps.
that I always thought that like
We have a motto.
would be
But
good.
I'm definitely open to those suggestions and ideas. I think when Fran and I were kind of brainstorming and what we thought it meant, but definitely wanting that feedback. And I think that's, can be a great idea.
Since
I
the
think
billboard
figuring
didn't
out-
really I don't know that it did a whole lot.
No,
Or going to farmer's market and standing
yeah,
in a booth.
that's just the same situation races is in, for example. I mean, I was a development chair for a while and on their board and worked for them when they didn't have men involved, and I was upset about that. That was in around 1980. That they could only afford a few billboards, and they went up and came down, and we did things on buses too and all. But if we're together, we can really help each other. Because there isn't always a lot of awareness of the other groups in the community. That's what I learned from the farmers market thing. I would go around with and do you know about this? And
Right.
people knew about their own thing, but they didn't really know about all the things that were available.
Yeah.
And they're surprised and happy. They're usually very positive. People usually respond very positive to resources in the community. So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for helping to clarify some of my statements. And I cannot agree with you more that this body has a quasi-judicial adjudicatory function. What I mean in terms of mediation is that mediation isn't introducing this competency and skill set and being ambassadors for it. And sometimes even in board meetings, I see that such a profound need for mediation. And it can be done by one board member that doesn't have a stake in the dispute between two other board members or in communities. And so as I had the opportunity to sit down in a focused way to really look at this continuum of service and mediation, what came to me is sort of being ambassadors for that process. And we may find ourselves in, the Champaign County, I understand, is forming a task force to look at racial justice. We may find ourselves in the various boards that we meet speaking to the value of mediation service. And to the extent that anybody here wants to become a mediator, it might not be you know, it might be lending service to another board, not quite necessarily in a
Yeah.
in a dispute settle. And so right now I was just thinking out loud that helping the community see the value of informal mediation and the addition of that skill set into our professional lives. And sometimes it's a minimal level, not the level of formal mediation. So thank you for clarifying that, because I did not want
No.
that to be the impression that I left. Thank you.
Great. Anything else, you guys? Okay. Next up, actually, is the Criminal Justice Committee, and that's me. For right now, I do have Alex's support, but I haven't met with him yet. My thoughts are, one is an old idea that we never really got off the ground. I want to explore, I'd be interested in exploring a felony expungement workshop, hosting that potentially through volunteers. I don't know what exactly that would entail. So certainly getting a space, and most importantly, getting lawyers or law students or who we need to volunteer their expertise. We'd need some forms downloaded and copied, but I think, and then getting the word out. So that's a kind of a specific event that I'd be interested in exploring further. My other two kind of thoughts were, we should maybe this committee should be, stay involved or keep monitoring the traffic study work that's been done. And then third, it's probably something we're gonna hear from all the committees, as I would love the notion of this committee maybe twice a year holding some kind of community forum where the Citizens Review Board shows up, or some churches, or I know Books for Prisoners, but just organizations that are trying to help people with reentry, recidivism, and bias that they're running up against. So that would be more of a sort of community building kind of project or liaison, to borrow from the last committee. But those are three ideas of many that this committee could take on for our community. But those were my initial thoughts. I look forward to hearing from you guys now or via the Survey Monkey or in the coming months. But those are some of my thoughts with where that committee might go. But that's just thoughts. So, anything
There
jumps?
is one idea,
Please.
because there's something that's just sort of been like weighing on me for a long
Yeah.
time, and that is that there are groups in this community that are disproportionately affected by various kinds of policing out of proportion to other groups. And sometimes we have our personal experiences aren't those kind of experiences, and we're not aware of just how much people suffer and how much no one knows about it. Like,
Yeah.
some people are so used to it that it's like business as usual, because they don't expect that there's any kind of relief for them,
Yeah.
or they're afraid that things will become worse. And so it's not just, I think what you said is really important, but I think there's also like people who have been targeted because of whatever identifying marker they have on them. And anyway, I'm just saying, like, this is something that I feel like if people knew that there was this commission and that they could actively and confidentially try to get some help, it might be really a good thing.
Yeah.
And that sort of goes into the community relations then
Well,
again.
And you know what comes to mind is we don't have public input. And what if we hosted a topic
Yeah.
like that? And we advertise that
Please tell us your story.
as much as you can and let them just, be heard,
We ought to have one of those, I don't know if you've ever been in New York City where they have the box where you go in and you tell your
Absolutely.
story. And like,
Oh, no, that's really
that would
cool.
be like, that would definitely
That's
fill it up.
really
I'm
cool.
serious, like,
Oh, like the old Speaker Square,
where
or-
people
yeah.
could just go and say, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know, you could say, maybe people are just making it up, but believe me,
Well,
Truth is
People don't
stranger
go
than
through all that
fiction.
effort to make things up. but-
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
But no, I
again.
like the notion of let's invite
Pass the line?
folks to, let's invite those communities to one of, to the public forum, or let's sponsor a specific event.
reach
But
out
I mean,
to
that's what we're designed for, so you're right on,
Stakeholders.
yeah.
Mhm.
You know, there are also, like I said, there's just people that they're kind of like, you know, their situation is precarious in some ways, so
Yeah.
they are very hesitant, or
Rightfully.
maybe they don't know the law very well, but they are being
Mm-hmm.
targeted and they are being set up.
Or it's been accepted as, okay, you know, this is my life, you know, that's
Mhm.
it'd be terrible, but it's
Yeah.
come to that, so, great, no,
Yeah.
Notice that the ACLU seems to be, have a special interest in this sort of thing lately. They just had some events, and
absolutely.
I think they are good people to ally with as well.
Yep.
I don't always agree with them, but they're still good.
We don't have to always agree,
Those are great.
but we just
Daniel?
need to get along.
Alex,
You know, one of the things that came out of that I've seen in the 4 responses already is a desire for ongoing some presentations from the community. So I'm going to start lining up a slate
great.
of presenters. And as I listened to you, 2 things came up. The first is that the task force held a town hall meeting during their study period, and it was before my time. But as I read, by the way, the final report is done. It's finalized, it's been published, and today a press release went out. So the press has already been here and has interviewed the mayor. And the report will be presented to the city council on December 7th at 7 p.m. here at the city council chamber. And as you read that report, there's a section, I think community impact, I think it's called. And in that were testimonials that were given at that town hall meeting. And from reading the report and just getting information from people that attended, it was a wonderful meeting. It was a safe space to share the experience that communities have with respect to the stops, the concerns they had, and it was enlightening for everyone. So as I listen to you, I'm sure that kind of opportunity is needed on an ongoing basis, and I think the report has a recommendation that happen with greater frequency.
Great.
So maybe we can discuss that. The other thing that came up is Rebecca, I think it's Dr. Rebecca Ginsburg at the University of Illinois is part of a project for helping incarcerated individuals gain baccalaureates from the University of Illinois, and they have a program in Danville. I attended a couple of her workshops and was choked up by some of the participants and their loved ones that are present discussing the challenges they face. And so I'm thinking I'm going to see if I can reach out to her and have her invite her to come speak to you and give you an overview of that particular program that it's accomplishing quite a bit. And then the final point I was going to mention is, which I may have mentioned to you before, is it was very enlightening for me when I attended the first reentry program at the Illinois terminal, and the Defender's Office was present and several others, and the individuals that are looking for employment. And it was really neat and fulfilling to have the outreach and to look them in the eye and say, you can hold your head high as you're applying for employment. There are rules in terms of how your conviction status can be used and cannot be used. And here's my card. I'm actually the person that you would file the complaint with and would investigate that.
That's nice.
And my cards were just, they took them all. And
Yeah.
and it was really, I could see in several of the visitors to my booth, a realization that, wow, there is an office that does this. And this is one area where I would appreciate some company if they do host it again next year. It was the first year, and they had an outstanding turnout. So
Great.
I'll make sure to put that on the calendar for us.
Thank you. So that's all I have. Can we move on to the Ordinance Enforcement Committee?
Well, I'm on it, and I think Pete's with me, but he's not here. Really, I haven't worked on it yet. One of the things that I had wanted to investigate was, because perhaps I'm wrong, but I thought when I first came on the commission that there was some sort of rule or law that there was supposed to be, like that Constitution part that we wrote was supposed to be put in every public place of, you know, and I've never seen it. And I was just like, okay, maybe I got it wrong, but,
No.
yeah, so I'd
right.
like to investigate that and see. And then so then there's also the housing.
It's the
as
same
well.
idea.
Yeah, so, I think that having something in the public is just, it might give someone pause
Absolutely.
before they, you know, make that comment.
It's interesting, I just incorporated a new business, and when we incorporated the nonprofit 6 years ago, you were required, after incorporating at the state, to notify the local county office, at which point you were somewhat notified of any local regulations that you should do, such as put things in. The state no longer requires that step. I actually went, because I had done this before, I had went to the county office and they're like, we don't have to do that anymore. So I feel like, you know, in starting a new business, there's nothing out there that educates new businesses about local. It's all about the state and the federal regulations in regards to discrimination, filing reports, taxes, all that. But there's nothing completely visible in any way, shape, or form for a new business owner to know about local regulations, unless you actually go looking for it.
Right.
Whereas all the other stuff, the federal stuff, the state stuff, it's stuffed down your throat.
And
So
it's such a big poster too. I was like,
Yeah.
I thought, okay, the
So
thing that-
is there no law for the city of Urbana that public places are supposed to have that, the thing that we
Display.
wrote up?
It's an
Right.
ordinance.
But the business
Okay.
needs to be aware
Right,
that
okay.
that is the
I
law.
just
I
wanna
mean,
make
that's,
sure
yeah.
before I
Yeah, that was the disconnect,
start
sorry, is that-
enforcing it.
yeah.
No.
And that, like, you know, with even the state of Illinois, when you apply for being a taxing organization, they actually require that 5x7 saying that you are now recognized as a business in the state of Illinois, and they require you to print it and frame it, and it be visible when you walk in the door.
Right.
And that's very clear. It's like, right, I mean, they send you that email that says, okay,
And usually
we
you
understand
see
that you're now, yeah.
And you see that first dollar.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see the other stuff.
So we need our poster right
So
under the
there's
first
just,
dollar.
yeah, there just needs to be more, and I really, like, in the past, we could have leaned on the county a little bit more for help and just said, here's a list of what new businesses should consider when starting a new business where
That would be
their address
great
is in Urbana. But
connection.
now, with that state law that says you no longer have to do this, there's no connection to new businesses other than by accident and by happenstance when they go for real estate or whatever. But several don't do that. I mean, if they're an internet business, if they're, you know.
Right, but I think if it were up, maybe whoever's the owner or manager would be
Yeah.
more likely when they hire people also.
Yeah.
Either that person is gonna say, hey, what is this? Or they may say, hey, see this.
Right. Might be a good thing to consider for a website, like things new businesses need to know.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, Kevin? Training and development?
Yeah, so for me, the survey results were really important. So we haven't gotten those. So we did not meet. We were waiting for those. We consciously said we wanted to wait for those. I mean, my general idea is the first step is to really, do what everybody else is doing, which is really narrow it down. And I see education having, based on our conversations, having it's twofold. one is internal education of us as a board or and commission, and the second being the community. I see internal probably more important as our focus. It'll be interesting to see what you all think in your responses. Simply, and I say that simply because, as we've talked about here, so much of you all want to do outreach to the community and do workshops that kind of takes that piece off of my plate if you actually follow through with doing that. And so I think if we're going to prioritize, the priority would be for this committee to focus internally, which would take some weight off yours. That slate of names that you want to do, you can just pass over to us, because you shouldn't, I mean, if we're going to have these committees, Alex, as much as we appreciate all that you're doing, there's other things you can be working on than getting guests for here. We can totally take that away, off your plate. Happy to do it. So appreciative of all the things you do for us. So if we can take anything off your plate, we can. So, I mean, I look forward to your feedback. Welcome to it right now. But that there is a lot of overlap with education. Everything touches education.
So maybe we can, like, narrow down after we get the results some main issues, and then all take a piece of that, because we're all working besides. And it can be, what can we do to help this agenda from the community relations piece, or whatever our title is, I forgot already. I mean, it's all new getting off the ground, but to me the overlap is awesome, because we're all like headed in the right direction, and we have different contexts, and I think we could, just kind of streamline and focus and all take a piece of it, so it's well done.
And if we could, I mean, by doing that, we can also really, I mean, everyone here at this table has other responsibilities. We have to be conscious of that. I have found that whenever, I've been on several boards, and whenever we go down this route of actually getting really, really organized, that becomes this, at first especially, this cloud of way too much work to do. So, one of the things that, like, there's four committees. Each committee could take a quarter and be like, we're going to do, we'll be in charge of something specific, outreach to the community, whatever, workshop specific to our committee, quarter one. This committee will do quarter two, whatever. So, I mean, like, with the guests, yes, we can have people coming every week. That takes a couple emails. But putting together something that involves getting the community here, going out to the community, that takes a little bit more effort.
Oh,
and,
much so.
I also want us to recognize that this committee and this city means so much to me, but it's also on top of other work that we're all doing. And we've got to recognize that, and we're not doing anyone in the community any good if we do it, halfway.
Yeah.
So by chunking it and dividing it up, we actually can more focus on a higher quality result. So
Sounds great.
I want to say that I really believe in what your committee is about, because I have seen how powerful it can be. When we had that big brouhaha about the anti-Semitic programming, and there was of course, it was a freedom of speech issue, and it became very deadlocked, and that was, it was very deadlocked. It seemed like there was no way out. The voices just kept getting louder and louder. And then two members of the city council, I believe Brandon was one of them, and Danielle Chenoweth, went to a workshop that was focused on, it was a national thing with people who were having the same problems and sharing solutions. And when they came back from that, that's when everything, they came back with a solution that really went a long way to undoing that awful deadlock that we had and calming people down. And so, and someone actually wrote a letter to the News Gazette saying that was a waste of taxpayer money, that trip. And I wrote right back, which I don't usually do because I don't want to go there, but I defending it as actually some of the best money that was ever spent. So I think training for us is huge. And
I think it's really important. I think most problems can be solved through some level of education. But I also, like, for your committee, I really believe that it's also two-pronged in regards to, if I think of it from the community's perspective, if I have a concern and I don't know where to go, that committee is like it. And then the other prong is proactiveness. So if I know that nationally we are seeing citizen protests going on, that committee could reach out to our police force and be like, how can we be proactive about this? How can we get out there? How can we encourage respectful demonstration and allow people's voices to be heard? And how do we give them a venue for doing that versus waiting for something to happen for us to intervene? I think those are really important pieces of your committee.
Wonderful, thank you all. Alrighty, excellent first month of committee reports. Let's move forward. Staff report. Alex, turning it over to you. We start with the EEO workforce statistics.
Okay, we have no new first-time applications. They're all renewals. The first one is for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, very large organization. They have increased their minority participation in the workforce to 19.2%. They were previously certified for a year, and we're recommending recertification for 1 year. The next company is Institutiform Technologies. They are a small company. Their current participation rate is 34.8%, and they were previously certified for 1 year, and we're following the precedent and recommending recertification for 6 months. The third company is Koning Body and Equipment. They are a similarly small company as the prior company. They were previously certified for 1 year, and we're recommending a downward departure to 6 months. Their current minority participation rate is 0%. And that's just to keep in step with the prior company. In terms of the fourth company, we have Michaels Corporation, very large company. They have increased their workforce. Their minority participation rate dropped by 1.9%. It's now at 8.6%, and we're recommending their recertification at the same level as last year, which is 6 months. Finally, we have Visu Sewer of Missouri. They're a small company. They were previously certified for 1 year. Their current minority participation rate is 5.9%, and we're recommending recertification at the same level of 1 year. Discussion?
Thank you, Alex. I guess I'm a little intrigued by maybe the second in Institutiform. 6 months, 34.8% minority representation. Maybe possibly a year, or is that even jump? That's above. That's above the community average? Is that fair to say, or?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one that I thought I'd like to discuss a little bit more, but others' thoughts about that or any of the other recommendations?
I'd like to hear if there was any specific reasons why the recommendation is 6 months.
It was just simply I feel like the commission's in a better position to move up or down.
Yeah.
In this case, I was just,
Well, it looks like the commission provided 6 months to begin with.
right.
Yeah.
So I figured, let me not go against the commission.
No,
It's
But
And that's how
I
we do
can
it.
definitely see a year as appropriate here.
I think we've. What is our gold standard for 2 years? Because isn't this
It's-
around?
yeah, it seems like it's around it, but
Is
I'm
it-
wondering why we gave it 6 months. Because it was at 30% a year ago, or a year,
Is it the distribution, maybe? I wasn't here for the original conversation. I mean, when you look at the
I just can't
distribution,
remember. Yeah, I mean,
it's
I'm sure.
21.7% African American, 4.3% women, which is
That's very
concerning.
Yeah.
13% Latino, and then 0% other, it looks like, so.
Yeah.
So, I don't know,
I
I
would
think I
guess it
would,
was probably the low percentage of women is why
Yeah.
we
yeah.
gave it 6 months, right? You know.
And just by way of a little information, the major activity of the company is trenchless reconstruction of underground water and sewer piping
That would be
using
why
cured
women aren't
in-place
doing that
pipes.
job.
Well, there's a
Just-
lot of women working in this field in town. Haven't you noticed?
Yeah.
I have seen them. City construction and stuff.
Oh, I have too.
Yeah.
No, they are, and more power to anybody who will do that job.
Mhm.
Well, I like the recommendations. I would lean towards maybe making that one a year, but following the rest, but I'm supportive of.
I'm supportive of a
committee's
year.
judgment as well.
I think, I mean, with the judgment, we can always make additional recommendations. I mean, I think increasing the other, minority groups, in this case, could get them to 2 years the next time.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, I'm okay with a year with a
Encouragement.
conditional statement, encouraging statement is a much better
Well, no, just say-
phrasing
say we're-
that says.
We're really pleased with your
right.
progress, but we'd love to see more outreach for female and other minority groups, something
Yeah.
like that in the letter. I know,
Yeah, just,
would-
yeah.
how does that sound?
Because it looks great. Like, I mean, overall, their numbers, from a baseline, looking at the final numbers,
Yeah.
pretty good. But
Are there any others folks would like to discuss? If not, is there a motion on the floor?
I would like to discuss any conditional or encouraging statements for the third company that
For
is
Koenig?
currently at 0, and yet we are I know that they're a small company and 22 employees is,
Our cutoff's 15, so
Right.
they're above
Mhm.
that
I was
threshold.
looking at
they're
that.
above that threshold. They've lost the one African American employee that they had.
Added one woman?
Yeah.
And are
Female?
they out of like St. Louis or what? It says of Missouri.
Are you looking at Koenig?
sorry.
Kevin?
Oh,
The last one I
you're
think
looking
might
at
be.
Koenig or Visa Sewer?
I'm looking at Cohen.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
I think it is Peoria.
Okay.
They're out of Peoria, Illinois,
Peoria.
which has some diversity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
We
6
could,
months, sorry.
we could ask them to submit quarterly EEO reports.
Well, I mean, a company that's that small is,
This is the first time they'll be getting a 6-month letter.
mhm.
That kind of, in theory, gets their, I mean, we've always operated, that's kind of where we get
Kinda like
people's
a
attention
notice.
for the first time.
Mhm.
And then we would consider going to denial of approval after that if we chose.
So they're in Peoria, but they don't have any people here in town working. They're just getting
Right.
contracts.
Yeah.
They're getting contracts to do
Fine there,
work here, yeah.
Here, there, yeah. They're anticipating in Urbana.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I would recommend 6 months.
Any other comments or thoughts regarding Koenig?
No.
Kevin, we didn't, how are you?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
After the discussion, I just
Don't want to,
nope. I
Steam-
appreciate
steamroll
you checking in with me, but I'm good.
okay?
I think there should be some kind of statement to the Visu Sewer Company, the fact that they have no minority employees at all. I know it is small, but to get the renewal in the wait a second.
Well, they did
No,
go-
I'm sorry. It's
they did
Kooning that
incre-
has none. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Take it
okay.
back.
They have,
Mixed up.
they did expand their company by 11, and added a few more minorities amongst those 11, but they're at 6%.
They did go up a little bit
They did.
from last year. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I think I just,
No.
Are they from St. Louis?
I don't know.
Definitely Missouri, I'm sorry.
I just had.
And again, they're small, and it's harder when you're
Yes,
small.
East St. Louis.
East St. Louis is a diverse.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and they have
I mean, that's kind of.
two women
Um,
and one African American.
yeah. I wouldn't, myself,
Yeah.
I would not, I would say 6 months.
4 out of 11 of their new hires is a fairly large, what is that, 40%, 45%?
Yeah.
Or
Closing on a
30, yeah.
Yeah, they did bring up their minorities by more than a percentage point.
So I think that
Yeah.
that says
I mean,
something.
the
I
two-
agree that the
the one
area that they're in
woman
is, but
And the one Latino, and yeah, that's
Yeah.
2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, if you're in
Oh.
East St. Louis,
yeah.
I mean,
And I have to say, I mean, this is
Yeah.
where I am going to, this is where I'm constantly challenged in this role.
Mhm.
Because as an HR manager who looks over the actual number of applicants and actually tracks gender and race specifically on applicants, and I look at, you know, the industry, I can tell you industry-wide, you know, that sewer companies aren't getting a lot of women applications. Does that mean they're less qualified? No. Does it mean it? But statistically, and this is where I get challenged. It's like, do I want them to represent better? Yes, I do. And this is where our job in education becomes really, really important in helping them reach out to a diverse community. Where are you advertising jobs at? Who are you partnering with when jobs come available? Do you have internship programs, and who are you partnering with that? Like, those specific efforts are really important. But for a company of going from 23 to 34, I've also been there. And I know like how quick that happens and how you're not ready for it. And I'm not making excuses. We need people to have make conscious efforts in their recruiting processes. Absolutely. But I'm constantly challenged with the statistics that I know to be true, even for an organization that I worked for, that made a very specific, concentrated effort to go after a variety of, you know, people.
well, I don't know if if their employees are union or not, which affects
Yeah.
who they
which
can
also
hire.
affects-
However, I will just say, East St. Louis has
It's very
a real,
diverse,
you
yeah.
know, if you've only got one African American and the town is substantially African American, it just seems odd to me.
Mhm.
Because I would imagine that a lot of the jobs have something to do with construction
Yeah.
and, but anyway. Myself, I say 6 months. This is just,
Okay. I completely understand that.
yeah. But whatever.
No, I think one of the ways, as Alex, you were talking about possibly updating the application, I think it would be interesting for people to actually do the work themselves and looking at what their census data is for their area so that they can compare their business as a part of the application process so they themselves can see what we see.
I think if they live in East
If they
St.
walk down
Louis,
the
they have a
street.
pretty good idea.
I know, but when you have to submit it on an
I know,
application,
I
it makes
know.
you more
I just
accountable to
give
it,
them a hard
right?
time.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and it may be that, you know, they hired those extra people because they start getting those contracts, including from Urbana.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops, sorry.
All right, do we have a motion on the floor by chance?
I motioned for 6 months.
Okay. So could,
need to
a
do
motion
each
for
one
all 5
separately?
renewals?
All of them.
I think we would, hypothetically, our motion would be
Omnibus.
1 year, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. Going by what we've discussed, I don't mean to.
Right. Yeah. that's what
If we're all in support, would someone like to move?
We do have a motion on the floor, though. I want to be, I do want to follow our rules. So we
Sure.
have a motion on the floor. If we want to amend that motion, we can, but
Okay.
we do
That's
have a
good
motion
point.
on the floor.
Excellent point. Maybe amend that motion, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. So I amend the motion for Visit Sewer, Missouri to be 6 months.
Okay. And the other 4, if you,
And then the other 4 to remain as they were. That would be Enterprise 1 year and
we actually talked
No.
about Institute also being 1 year.
1 year, and then 6 months for Koenig
Mhm.
and 6 months for Michaels. Is that Michaels or? Okay, because is that spelled correctly? Okay.
Okay, is there a second? We still have time to discuss.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion, thoughts? Feels like we're, I know we've kind of already had the discussion, but
I think
I
that's,
don't want to shut it
We're
off. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, the same? Excellent. Alex, where would you like to go next?
Okay. In terms of new substantial contacts, the individual that I met with last month is going to be coming in this Friday and to sign a complaint. And so then there will be an addition to the complaint roster. We have had no other substantial contacts apart from progress in that particular case. In terms of active cases, we have, in the first case, I am reviewing a response from the respondent's attorney, and we'll be getting back to them over the next 3 weeks. In case number 2, case number 2 and case number 3 are my high priority for the next 45 days. In case number 2, I am working to schedule some interviews so that I can complete and make a determination. In case number 3, we are having a settlement conversation now, and perhaps that will be settled. I'll know more hopefully by the next time that we meet. In case number 4, we have, I'm now at the determination stage and hope to have that finalized for next meeting. And then the last case, we have received a response, and I'm in the process of reviewing that and then moving forward to issue a request for information depending on what's needed to evaluate what is asserted.
Does anyone have any questions for Alex? Excellent, thank you. Where would you like to go next? Budget?
that's it.
There have been no changes to the budget since our last meeting.
Thanks, Tony. Alex, anything else to add?
The only other thing that I would add is very impressed with the Civilian Police Review Board. They had their first meeting to review the taser displays. We, I understand, purchased 6 tasers, and I believe they were introduced to the police department in March. And between March and when we last met, they were displayed 6 times. And so during the maiden voyage of doing a taser review, we played each of the taser videos for the chamber and the public, and then had some discussion. All of the taser displays did not rise to where the person was actually tased, so it was just displayed. In all of the 6 situations, the use of it met the criteria of the policy. The individuals were either in an excited state or were having some challenges interacting, and the device was used in order to gain compliance, and they did. It really was a very fruitful discussion. Of course, we will at some point probably end up reviewing a situation where an individual is actually tased, and that will be an even more complex analysis. But I did want to let you know that we did complete that, and it was reported in the newspaper that we had it, and it was without event, really. And I think that speaks to the great judgment and precaution and policies and procedures that were put in place by the city and the police department and a commission, CPRB review board. So it in my view, it's sort of like we did it right. And if we ever have an error, of course, that'll be reviewed by the board.
Thank you, Alex. Any announcements? I would note, one of the last great moments of public participation we had was when we were discussing the Ban the Box initiative.
Yes.
And I believe 10 days ago, our president signed an executive order banning the box from federal applications, I believe.
Yep.
So we were, well, we know we don't need any justification, but we were right, I think.
I like saying that. No, that's really great to see.
So it was
We
nice
were
to
ahead of the
see.
game.
We were ahead of the, as a typical
part of it.
Urbana was at the cutting edge
Seriously.
of human rights.
Nice.
So.
That was a good
I mean that
announcement.
seriously, but anyway,
Yes,
that
no.
was great news. If there's nothing else, everybody have a great November. We'll see you back here in December.
Wow.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.